Zohran Mamdani, the new mayor that was just elected for New York City. He is a democratic socialist with hopes of socially reforming their city into a more equitable and just place to bring about harmony and unity. But I'm not so sure about freedom. That I learned that his biggest driving factor, like the greatest population of voters, like a voter turnout, was Gen Z. And they were the driving factor of that win. And I just had to think to myself, how? I've seen so many memes of people forgetting 9/11 and then electing a Muslim mayor. But you know, like, for these kids, they didn't live through that. They don't understand what that was. And also, they have been educated especially in New York, in this era of social emotional learning, of Marxist education. So there you have a huge political literacy without literacy of anything that actually happened in history. As I was hearing about the reforms that Mamdani wants to make at the expense of the elite, I couldn't help but think of Plutarch and the life of Lycurgus. I taught that to my kids, I think last year we went through Lycurgus, and he was a Spartan regent who pretty much wanted to do the same thing. There's some similarities there where he reformed Sparta. Oh, there's a lot of police officers over here. Let me in, home skillet. He reformed Sparta by taking away land from the aristocracy, from landowners, or even those who had their own businesses, things like that, and redistributed it to the entire nation. They were each given a sizable piece of land that they would each then be obligated to grow enough crops that when they harvested it, it all went back to the state. And then the state would take everything that came in and equally redistribute that in the form of mess halls, so they would all eat together. And so all of their portions were exactly monitored, distributed according to what the entire nation brought together and sent out. So it was just pretty much this whole idea of harmony, equity, everybody gets the same thing at the expense and oppression of those that had and gave it to those that did not have. And, you know, of course, as all communism goes, that didn't end well because, well, communism doesn't work. There is no such thing because people are born sinners. There is always going to be someone at the top that's going to be power hungry, and we've seen this through COVID. There's just people that love power, and when they get it, they abuse it. And so what happens? Well, those on the bottom are the ones that suffer the most. So this is just communism. But I was thinking, my goodness, these kids that voted for Senior, I want to go all the way to communism because he's, had these Marxist comments and these communist comments. They've never heard about this in their social schools that just fed them a bunch of political literacy activists, brought them out to vote, and yet gave them no knowledge of anything that is true, good, and beautiful. So they weren't even able to understand all of these different communistic events that have happened since antiquity, which it makes me sad that this is the state of where we're at. And then to make things get even worse, Mamdani is working under a worldview. Everybody works under a worldview, and his is going to be based on Islam, on the Quran. I've heard this so many times where Muslims are always driven to the left. And why? Because they can. People on the left, most people on the left, are operating not on a biblical worldview where everything is based on the standard of God. The standard of God, which is love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And when you don't have an actual standard to live under, your only hope is in the state. And unfortunately, for the majority of Generation Z, those that have been educated under a Marxist education, those who only know that to do justice is to demand equality and equity for the oppressed, because they have been trained to see this structural oppression that has happened. I mean, this is what they actually learn in school, that there's a system of structural oppression. And what are they going to do to make themselves feel better and make themselves feel as if there's something driving their life? The only truth behind it is the state. And so they fall right in line, and those that have a worldview that are trying to demolish, I mean, and this is Marxism too though, but having to actually destroy what has been deemed good, which has been the best system of democracy, this constitutional republic that we live in, that has been the only system of government that has actually worked for the freedom, the true freedoms that we have been granted. They need to destroy it. And they've been taught that that is what is good. So it's just frustrating. Really, what these kids need is a solid education based on a solid foundation of truth, goodness, and beauty, which is only found in the scriptures. But really what they need is just to also understand history, understand where they've come from. Homeschool your kids. I guess that's what I'm saying. You want to know why this country is going the way that it is? Because our kids are public schooled. Homeschool.